From Struggle to Strength. Today, I'm very happy to have Melissa Monroe with us. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Ruth. It's nice to be here.
So, Melissa, tell us a little bit about what you're passionate about and why.
All right. I'm passionate about many things. The thing that I'll talk about today, though, is that I'm very passionate that grief is something that is not pathological. Grief is a natural process, a natural response to the loss of someone or something that we love. And pathologizing it creates a lot of problems, not just individually, but societally.
So share a bit about your story and the difficult events that you've experienced that led you to where you are today.
Okay. In 2013, 11 days after her second birthday, my daughter Alice died in her sleep of unknown causes. We had no idea what happened. She had a little cold when I put her down for her nap, but and after all of the autopsy and all that, the little cold didn't kill her. We still don't know why she died. We will likely never know why she died. And I'm an acupuncturist, and I've always been in the healing fields. So I've always known from working with my patients and my clients through the years that grief was something that tended to be pathologized that shouldn't be. But that really became glaringly obvious in the wake of losing my daughter, Alice. And I also it became very clear. Again, I always knew we were kind of grief illiterate as a society, but it became crystal clear after Alice died. I saw a lot of people that wanted to help that didn't know what to do or say, and in a way kind of expected me to hold their hand through my loss, which I wasn't able to do really, because I could barely speak, because in addition to the loss, it was a great shock, and I found her, and so I had PTSD, and I tried CPR, and so all of that was very traumatizing. So it wasn't that I didn't want to help me. It was that I just wasn't able to, especially at first. And it also leads people to say some things that are not just not helpful, but hurtful. But even at the time, I recognized that they didn't mean to hurt me. We don't know what to do, because it's not something we talk about in Western society. There are some countries that are better at it than the Irish are much better at it than we are, but largely we suck at grief. And we are a very youth obsessed culture. We use youth to sell things. We use youth as our billboard for everything. There are entire industries based on looking younger, feeling younger, all of this stuff. And so death, dying, all is stuff that no one wants to talk about. It's way more fun to gossip about the Kardashians or, compare sneaker brands or whatever. But death is the only thing that's going to happen to us all. Some people say death and taxes, but there weren't always taxes. We are all, if we live to be older than my daughter was, we are all going to experience grief at some point, and we are all, spoiler alert, going to die one day, but we are wholly unprepared for all of it. And so as I got better, it just became, I started writing right after she died, because I couldn't talk and no one knew what happened. And I saw that they wanted to ask, but they didn't know if it was okay to ask. And I didn't have any problem letting people know what we knew, but I literally couldn't talk. And if I spoke more than a half an hour, I felt like I couldn't move. Like it was just so exhausting. So I've always been a writer, kind of quietly in my room, mostly not sharing it with anyone. But I thought I'll just write about it. And then they can read it if they want to know what happened. And if they don't want to, that's fine. I'm, whatever. But there it is. Then I felt like I was doing it to save my breath,
Right.
literally, and to help people understand what was going on, because I could tell they wanted to be helpful, but didn't really know how they could be helpful because no one really knew the
Hmm.
details. So as I got better, the writing was really, really probably saved my butt more than anything. But um, it just became clear to me that the response to the writing was overwhelming and so much more than I could have ever. I mean, I had no idea that it was going to become a thing outside of our circle,
Right.
but it did. And I thought, wow, there really is a need for this.
Hmm.
And I don't mind talking about it. So, you know,
Hmm.
I'd rather talk about meaningful things than sneakers anyway. So
Yes.
I guess I'm the girl or one of them at least.
Oh, I'm so sorry for the death of your daughter.
Thank you.
I had a miscarriage. I didn't
Mm,
get to meet my child, but
mm. It's a
grief is
very
such a
unique,
hard thing, isn't it? And it's so individual. Everybody has a different way of dealing with it. And
they do.
yes, people say things and do things that are very strange when they come to see you and you're grieving. But it's it's not talked about enough in our culture.
No, it's not. And it's really a shame because it's crippling. And one of the things I wanted to be clear to people, and it's not to like praise the people who were able to do this and demonize the other, but the people who were able to be there for me. And mostly what I needed was for someone to just sit with me in
Hmm.
silence.
Hmm.
There
Just be
there's
there.
nothing you can say. There's nothing you can, no, there are no magic words that are, I mean, there are words that are more helpful than others, or
Mhm.
or less hurtful than others, but there's no words really anyway. Um, the actions are what were more helpful, and the just knowing that someone was willing to sit there with me
Mhm.
at my worst, and
Mhm.
that it really deepens relationships and it strengthens communities, and it's a skill that we really need to learn because we were robbed of learning this very basic skill. In my opinion, grief really is more a skill is maybe a reach, but it's a
Mhm.
natural thing, and we can definitely learn to do it better, and we can learn to support it better.
Mhm.
And what you were saying about it's different. I write about this in my upcoming book, and I've written about it in my blog, and I've talked about it a lot. It's really important to remember that not only do individual people grieve differently, individually, we grieve differently.
Mhm.
Individually, we don't grieve different deaths the same way. Um, Individually, we don't grieve the same death the same way, even 5 minutes to 5 minutes to 5 minutes. So
Yes.
an expectation that, and this happens with a lot of couples, and an expectation that an entire community or a couple or a family unit should grieve the same way at the same time forever and ever, amen, creates a lot of problems. That said, I just realized my globes make me look like I have ears, which is I look like the creature in Avatar. So I'm gonna do this. That's not good.
Humor is
Um,
wonderful in helping to work through grief, isn't it?
yes, it is. Gallows humor is the way to go. So yeah, we don't individually grieve this different deaths the same way. We don't individually grieve the same death the same way. So these cultural expectations that everyone's grief response should be any kind of certain way is really damaging.
Mm. So, was there a particular time during your grief journey when you knew you had a choice to make?
Yes, immediately. Maybe not immediately, but within the first 24 or 48 hours, I would say that I knew that there were many, by the way, but this is one of the more important ones.
Mhm.
I knew that I did not want this to be the thing that defined me.
Mm.
I also knew that I was terrified that my daughter would be forgotten,
Mm.
um, and that she was only 2. So,
Mhm.
she didn't buy Twitter. She didn't, become president. She was not going to have, some massive legacy that people were going to write about in history books.
Mhm.
But she mattered, and she did have
Mhm.
an impact on her family and her little community, and
Mhm.
she was important. And so I knew that I had to make a choice. I did not want to be seen as a victim. That was really difficult for me. For a while, every room I walked in,
Mhm.
it would go silent. And I could feel all the people looking at me like, oh my God, that's that poor woman whose kid died for no
Mhm.
reason.
Mhm.
And while I didn't want them to forget her, or that it's called SUDC, sudden unexplained death in childhood, and it basically just, it's when a child 1 to 18 dies without cause, basically. They can't determine a cause after a lengthy autopsy, death investigation, etc. Then they classify it as SUDC. I obviously wanted people to become more aware of it. I was not aware of it. I kind of thought, oh, they made it past infancy. So,
Right.
no SIDS,
Mhm.
we're free. And I could tell that that was terrifying to,
Mhm.
many of our friends had children the same age, and I could see that I became the living, breathing poster child of all of their worst nightmares. And
Mm.
totally understandably, by the way, I would have felt the same way.
Mhm.
But it was a lot to take in.
Mhm.
And I did not want to be perceived as a victim,
Mm.
nor did I want to take that on as an excuse to, give up on
Mhm.
life and
Mhm.
kind of live like a zombie.
Right.
But I also wanted to honor the very real feelings and have an authentic expression of grief. And so I knew that that would be a tough line, that's a razor's edge. But I knew that immediately. Like, I don't want to live as a victim, but I also don't want people to forget her.
Mhm.
And so that informed a lot of the decisions I made
Mm.
afterwards. What can I do that will create a legacy for her, because she doesn't get to do it for herself, and
Right.
to try to make any kind of lemonade out of these lemons, and not, take to my bed and say, oh, well, I can't do that. I lost a child. I can't do
Right.
that. I lost a child. I would say that was one of the more important decisions that I had to
Mm.
make.
Thank you for sharing that with us. You've talked about writing because you couldn't speak. You've
Mhm.
talked about creating a legacy on behalf of your daughter. How has the struggle and working through grief made you a stronger person?
Look, I think anytime we learn to be able to sit with emotions that, society tells us are bad or um, undesirable. I mean, grief's not as fun as sitting on the beach. Grief's not as fun as sitting at the hotel pool with the, pool boy or girl bringing you drinks. Like, it's not as fun, that's for sure. But anytime we learn to sit with ourselves and create a space where other people can sit with us when it's just really honestly not a great time, it makes us stronger,
Mm.
for sure. That said, I write about this also, I would trade my alleged strength to have her back any day of the week, but I don't get that choice.
Mhm.
It absolutely made me stronger. I would never, this is not the path I would have chosen,
Mm.
obviously, for myself or my daughter. But
Mhm.
yes, it has made me stronger. And I think any difficult things that we live with, that we honor and allow ourselves to go through authentically, it will make us stronger.
Mhm. So, what advice do you have, first of all, for those who are going through a similar circumstance as what you faced, losing a child or losing someone close to them?
To accept help. I had to learn the very most important thing I think I learned in that regard was to say yes, to offer sub help. And I will relay a story I've relayed a few times. It was the day after, I think, and my best friend who I call Bubba. His real name is Michael, but I've called him Bubba so long that I slip back. And now that I do interviews and stuff, I know I should say Michael, but I've called him Bubba for so many years that I slip back into Bubba. He kind of took over. I had no executive functioning skills whatsoever, and it was very obvious to me. In fact, it was kind of, I was awestruck by it. I was like, wow, my brain does not work. I can see that that person is talking. I can't, they've said too many words though. And now it was like Charlie Brown's teacher, literally like
Mm-hmm.
and he could see that that was happening to me. And so he had, had the foresight to put things in bullet points for me. He became kind of like a translator for me. And he became like, I could talk to like one or two people, but not like over and over and over again all day. So he was doing a lot. He was my executive functioning basically. And he came to me and he said, these mutual friends of ours want to help. And, they had become very successful in Hollywood. He said they want to help. Whether it's, do you need to move out of here and get into a new place? I said, well, what I really need is my brother here. And I know he doesn't have the money to get his family of 4 on a last minute, plane ticket. They're, just working class people. It will be like $4,000 or something. And he said, okay, well, they're going to do that. And I said, I can't accept that. Like, I don't know them. I started all the usual crap that I do. Like, oh, I couldn't possibly, I don't know them well enough. And in my mind was so broken that I thought I hadn't seen these mutual friends in a long time. And they were friends I kind of more knew from him. In my mind, I hadn't seen them in a long time, but in reality, I'd seen them 3 days before. That's how I was. I said, I couldn't possibly, la, 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 la. And he just grabbed me by the shoulders. He said, Melissa, you need help. They want to help. They have the money. Say yes. Just like that. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I realized internally, like, this is no time for her. Like, what am I doing? But I'm a Midwestern girl, and that's kind of like a Midwestern thing to like, oh no, I can do it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. But this was not a time for that. And he was right. And so there were many times, especially in those first few months, where his voice would echo in my head, just say yes, just say yes, just say yes. But also boundaries.
Right.
Grief really cracks you wide open. And in a way that can be very beautiful. It's it has sad origins, but that kind of openness is, in a way, I think we should all live that way for, with less dire causes a lot of the times. But when you're that open, there will be people that come around that are, kind of tragedy hoppers. So boundaries. So say yes, but also have boundaries. So it's a little bit like that razor's edge of, I don't want to be a victim, but I also want her to be remembered. But I don't want, but I don't want it to be like, you have to be nice to me because my kid died. Yeah, I can't ever work again because my kid died. I can't, watch. Of course, there's a time where the freshly bereaved, especially when it's an unexpected death, shouldn't really be expected to do much regular life stuff. But I did not want that to be a lifetime thing. And so this was another razor's edge. Say, accept help, but also have boundaries. There was a, person who did a fundraiser in my daughter's name, but they never gave us the money. And do I put like that? I mean, they didn't really care about the money. It was just like, what did you, I don't know. Did you have a fundraiser in my daughter's name and keep the money? Cause that's yucky. And I don't like that. But, so yes, say yes, but also have boundaries, because there will be people that take advantage of your openness.
That's great advice. What about the other side? So we've talked about you as a person going through grief. What about, what advice would you give to people who are visiting somebody who's dealing with grief?
this is what I really like to talk about, actually, because we're going to be in that position more than we're going to grieve.
Mhm.
Frankly, we all have multiple friends, multiple family members. They're all going to lose. We're each going to lose people in our lives. All of us are going to have 6, 7, maybe 10 really significant losses in our lives. But when you open that to your community, you're going to be the person that needs to be the support
Mm.
more often than you're going to be the person that needs to be supported. So
Mhm.
I love this question. Thank you for asking it. And it's a big reason why I do what I do. I really hope that people listen to my content so that they learn how to become better supporters, because it is a skill.
Mhm.
Common advice is, treat people how you would like to be treated. Like, how would you? And I don't think that applies in grief.
Mm.
First of all, the person you're supporting might feel different in 5 minutes than they feel right now, because especially in the early days, the stages of grief are like, or you're cycling through them real fast, sometimes
Mhm.
within seconds. So listen, you don't have to say magic words. There are no magic words. You
Mhm.
Doesn't mean you can't talk. It just
Right.
means everyone should take that pressure to, like, I'm going to say the perfect thing. You're not going to say the perfect thing. There's no perfect thing to be
Mhm.
said. So, maybe don't say something hurtful, like, don't force a change in perspective. You should look at it this way, or at least you have another kid, or, like, don't push for them to look at things differently. Just
Mhm.
sit there with them where they are
Mhm.
and listen. And if you listen, the people who were the most helpful for me were able to do that. And then, like my friend Deanna, I share this story a lot. We were overwhelmed by the amount of trash in the house. There were so many people in and out of our house for a week that there was more trash than trash cans. And so we were having animal problems and
Ugh.
stuff like that. And she overheard us talking about that. So she and her now ex-husband came and got rid of all the trash and took it to the dump.
Mm.
Um, she's also the same person that I couldn't look at the crib that
Mhm.
my daughter was in. There was really nothing else in the beginning that I had to avoid completely, but that looking at that crib,
Mhm.
what I was like, the crib has to go.
Mhm.
And in LA, I don't know if it's like this in Canada. In LA, a lot of people put their, like, old furniture just out on the easement almost every time someone will come get it. And then
Right.
you're like, great, someone needed that couch and I didn't have to, no
Didn't
one's
have to
going to
take it
buy
to
the
the dump
couch.
or
Goodwill won't take the couch. But it's not a bad couch. It just doesn't fit in my new place or whatever, for whatever reason you're getting rid of the couch. I didn't want to put it out by the trash because we still didn't know what happened. And I didn't feel like it was probably the crib's fault because my older daughter had slept in the same crib, but I didn't want to risk,
Mhm.
if something had happened to if we had a gas leak and, like, we had no idea what happened. And so I didn't want to risk that happening. And so the same friend overheard that concern of mine and destroyed the crib and also got that to the dump. Another friend noticed that, oh my gosh, there's like 100 people in here, and I'm sure they weren't uh, ready for that. And she came by with 2 huge garbage bags full of toilet paper, paper towels,
Mm.
tissue. She's like, I'm Italian, and I know when someone dies, you're never going to have enough paper products. So here's some paper products. And she was right. Like, we would have been out in like less than 24 hours. And I certainly didn't have the wherewithal to go to the store. So I think my best advice is to don't do what you would like to have done to you, because first of all, a lot of the times you're not really going to understand exactly where that person is. Not all losses hit the same. But listen, just listen, and through that you'll be able to discern what will be helpful and what will not be helpful, and action over words every time.
Mhm.
uh, I will also say, no one in the fresh throes of grief, especially if it's an unexpected death, is capable of, like I had to sit on AT&T and expand my text coverage because I ran out within like 2 days.
Mm.
And I just remember thinking, like, It's so stupid. I have to be on hold with AT&T for 55 minutes when my kid just died. Like, this is not. So
Mhm.
as much of that kind of stuff as grocery stores, taking other children to picking up family members from airports, like as much of that, like the bureaucracy of everyday life you can get off someone's plate in the beginning is great. And food. I'm going to talk about food. Food's great, but we had so much food, we didn't have anywhere to put it. And in the beginning, that was mostly okay because we also had so many people. But
Mhm.
my friend Janet kind of took over the food. She's a realtor, and she's very good in a crisis anyway. She's the kind of person you want in charge of stuff if there's a tragedy, because she knows what to do. So Janet found, she kind of organized all that. Okay, we're sending all sandwiches. We're going to this neighbor's house, and that's where they'll be. And we're going to serve those on Thursday because they're not going to last as long as the lasagnas, which are at these people's freezers. And we'll do that on Sunday. And so she kind of took over that, which was a huge help because we needed the food. We just didn't have anywhere to put it.
Right.
So if you're an organized kind of person, and some people, when there's a tragedy, like really kind of go into that director mode, that was really helpful.
Mm. Those are very practical tips. Thanks for sharing those. So what doors have opened because of what you've been through?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because it's a tricky one. I don't think anyone who's lost a child particularly wants to see anything that happens afterwards as a door. There will be doors, but I have yet to meet a bereaved parent who would say I would give anything good that happened to me in the wake of this back in a heartbeat to have my child back. But again, we don't get that choice. I would guess that one door is the main door is that it has given me a platform to help people understand their own grief and how to support grief in their loved ones better, I would say is the biggest door. And again, I wish I could have found this door from any other hallway.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, I'm sure you know this, because I think it's really common with miscarriage, particularly. A lot of times the people who are trying to support you, and they mean well, we never, ever, 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 ever should point out the silver lining for someone else. We should never even really encourage them to. That said, I did that myself, but it was something I did for me.
Right.
But one should never encourage, even bring it up. Like, don't ever bring up to someone really going through a difficult time, like a cancer diagnosis or the loss of a child or anything that's super serious. It is not our place to say, like, how are you going to make this great? Like, that's not, don't do it. don't do that. That said, there will be doors. And whether it's a loss like I had, or a cancer diagnosis, or an ALS, or something that's truly life-changing, no one wanted to find that door that way. And so I think we have to be very empathetic about that and understand and not really push the agenda of, oh, your daughter died. Oh, that's really sad. Oh, so how are you going to make it beautiful? Well, I'm internally driven to that, but it's not, we should never say that to another person.
So what do you do for work now? And is that affected by what you've gone through?
It has, oddly, I had I'm an acupuncturist. I'm a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. I also have been a teacher, not so much now, but I've also taught at the graduate level and continuing education level, other acupuncturists. But I always had people that came to me just for grief, which is not the number one reason people come to acupuncture is pain. And then I joke that they come for the pain, but they stay for the psychology, because a lot of times people start to see how their repressed emotions maybe are not the cause of the pain, but they're definitely exacerbating it and making it difficult to heal. If you treat them and guide them the right way through their recovery from pain, they can start to kind of see that on their own without you telling them. So that's the number one reason. But for some reason, I've always had a lot of people that came for just grief. And I would say that that is increased, and trauma. Yeah,
Mm.
I have a lot of PTSD patients. I was also invited to teach continuing education courses to acupuncturists on the topics of grief and PTSD in the wake of losing my daughter. So that was different. That was a very rewarding experience.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of time spent on that in acupuncture school, and I have a lot of doctor colleagues who are like, there's not a lot of time spent on it in medical school
Mhm.
either. So that was a great opportunity
Mm.
to kind of inform the people who people will go to for support when they're
Right.
going through a tough time, so that they can be more literate of how to do that successfully.
Mm. That's great. Anything else that you would like to share?
Try not to be afraid of your own difficult things. It makes it worse. The fear, like oh shit, this is this is hard and this is not fun. We become afraid of it, and the fear makes it a billion times worse. And by the same token, try not to let that happen when someone in your circle needs support, and anyone that was able to be there with me, like really just be there with me when it happens, has said that it has helped them be a better friend, not just to me, but to all of their friends and to their family members. And I'm not taking credit like that. I'm not saying that was like unique to me. I think anyone that's able to sit there with any close friend, family member, whatever, is going to find that all of their relationships deepen
Mhm.
because of it.
Mhm. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
I have a mailing list, and I'm on Twitter. I'm triple M meaning. And I can send you the links if you want to
Sure.
add them. Yeah. And my website is melissamariemonroe.com.
Thank you.